Hello, guys. Welcome to the Abstract Room. We are discussing Normal People today by Sally Rooney. Okay, so anybody who just finished the book or recently finished the book, any thoughts? What has the book left you with? What do you think are the things you're going to take away with it? अगर एक महीने बाद 2 महीने बाद कोई पूछे क्या थी ये book, तो what will you say?
Yeah, I just finished it like 2 hours ago. And actually, I loved the book. Just ending was abrupt, is what I felt. But again, as you said, the conversation should go like we can talk casually. So I love movies and books of that kind, which can initiate conversation between people and friends, who can talk about it. And what I can take from book is like people can communicate better if they want to really work on any relation in life. And yeah, so it's not necessary you have to be normal or you have to fit in certain standards that people have set for men and women, but you can find that one person, and then there can be like you will never be able to find love in life. Or and it is also not necessary that you have to find someone to be dependent on, like at that point which author has mentioned, like you can completely be dependent on someone, which I really don't agree with. But again, yeah, I have some different point of view in that way. But as a whole, I love the book except for the ending. But as Ria said, I will watch the show, and it will help me to gain better perspective.
Probably.
Yeah.
A friend had read it earlier. She said that, oh, I read Normal People when I had just finished the show and was like heights of, frenzy and all that. And she said it's a little tedious to read. काफी long winding run on sentences है उसमें, which is true. And they're like the tone of the book seems very passive to me, which sort of reflects their at least Connell's dynamic in the relationship, in the whole, he's a very passive person. Like, for example, you take that instance of him just having to ask Marianne, that, can I stay here for the summer? And he doesn't. He just assumes that, maybe she'll say no. And he said, you know what, I'll just go back. And she's like, oh, so you want to break up with me? And I'm like, no, just talk to her. She would say yes. But I think that is the hamartia in that like fatal flaw in their relationship. Ki matlab, both of them are like scared and attracted to each other because of these qualities, that they are sort of dependent on each other. Like he says in there's this very really famous line that, Marianne, I'm not a religious person, but I do believe that God made you for me. So, which is like thoda cheesy even by Connell's standards, because like nowhere in the book he's like this direct with her, but this line probably encapsulates what he feels for her. So in a way, he is sort of dependent on her. She's someone who understands. So I think that relationship was very real to me, except for the extreme passivity probably. Matlab relationships mein काफी passivity hoti hai. Like there is this dynamic where one person sort of, what, like maybe a lot of assumptions happen, a lot of like class conflict is seen in this. His mother works for her mother. So obviously wo thoda like he will feel a little insecure, and that insecurity is sort of mirrored in his relationship with her, in his conversation. That's why he doesn't want any more favors from her, which leads to more misunderstanding and all of that. So I mean, I think that the show biased me a little. That's why I didn't find the book that bad. Like, in fact, I didn't find it bad at all. It can get tedious, like the style, but and the ending is काफी different in the show, but in the book, yeah, it sort of reflects Connell ka coming back full circle to what his actual temperament is, that he is pulling away, which Marianne feels, which I think it was justified, because he is like that as a person. You can't really expect him to change just because he's in love with someone. Like sometimes you retain that aspect of your individuality, which finally causes you to sort of, I don't know, fall out or distance or whatever. But I thought it was a very real take on relationships, a more mature take on teenage relationships I've seen in all of my readings.
Yeah, I think even I watched the show first, and I don't know if that's the right order to do it. I read the book after watching the show, and I think, as Ria said, there is a little bias because the show is so good, and especially the guy who played Cauldron, Paul Mescal, is so good that I feel that when I read the book, I imagined him, and there are some differences in the way the book is written. I think that there is one thing that I thought was like sort of problematic is in the book, especially in the beginning, the way Connell treats Marianne, of course, is very problematic. Basically, in the show, when both of them are intimate for the first time and all, it's shown in a very mature way. Connell is shown in a completely different way from how the book is. Now, Connell is never violent with her or anything like that. He's always respectful of her. But in the end of the book, there is a paragraph where Connell really reflects and realizes, where he says, I've always had a certain power over her, and I've probably even cultivated that. And then you feel like, okay, finally he's realized it, and that, okay, there's some sort of consensus. But then what I thought was later when he goes to Marianne's house after her brother hits her, and he's sitting in the car, and there's one sentence where he says he looks at her and he felt the power over her rushing back to him or something like that. So then I was wondering why that line was there, because it felt like they'd been through this thing where in like outside really Marianne is the one who's more confident, she's more assertive and all of that, but when it's just them, it's like he has a certain power over her in a way, and she's almost subservient. Like there's one part where she even says, and I felt very uncomfortable, she says, I just lie down here and you could do whatever you want with me, or things like that. So when at the end of the book, when Connell says this, you think, okay, there's some conclusion that he's now realized it. But then I was just wondering, maybe one of you could tell me what that line meant or why she put that in there. That's not there in the show. So when I read the book, it just that was something that I really sort of confused me, I think.
I think that was just a subconscious reflection of Marianne's own perception of like the dynamic in his eyes. Like I don't think he would have thought of that on his own. Like as far as his trajectory in the book follows, is what I think. I don't know how right it is, but Marianne constantly sort of tells him, right, that you have this power over me. You could do anything to me, and I wouldn't even mind. So I think that sort of repeated thing probably might have subconsciously like cultivated this thought that what, maybe I do hold a power over her. And these instances just sort of, her words maybe sort of conditioned him to believing that, which is one explanation that I can give, because sometimes you don't even think that of yourself, but if someone sort of constantly reminds you that you're this, you start believing them, even if it's not true, probably. Which is probably what happens in negative circumstances also. Like someone might tell you you're not good enough multiple times, you start believing that probably you're really not good enough. So maybe that's what happened to him, because as far as I can tell, he was a very placid person. You wouldn't really expect someone like that to think that sort of a thing as a first thought. Probably it was not like a naturally occurring thought. And
yeah, that's what even I was feeling. It felt like a little like outside of what he would react in that situation. Yeah, what you said makes sense.
Yeah, so usually being a psychology student, मुझे ना ऐसे आदत है कोई भी नॉवेल हो ना तो कैरेक्टर्स का ऐसे एनालाइज करने की कि कोई क्यों कैसा है, ये कैरेक्टर क्यों ऐसा है, एंड वो रफ आइडिया यूजुअली आ जाता है. बट इन केस ऑफ मैरियन मुझे समझा ही नहीं वो ऐसे क्यों है.
You'll never be able to find love if you think you aren't worthy of it.
That's what happened with Marianne, I guess. at some point she has these thoughts like she will never be able to find love. The
Also
men
because
yeah.
yeah, exactly what you were saying. The men in her life have all
Mhm.
been abusive. Her brother, her dad.
Yeah.
Home life has generally been very frigid. Her mom also. She's just like, you know, in right at the beginning, somewhere in the middle or something, she says, "That's just like you, Marianne. You know what? Like,
Mhm.
you don't understand. Like, you just need the attention all the time, don't you?" She's just like, जाने दो अब मैं क्या ही बोलूं.
Yeah.
Like a very troubled home life. That's why probably she thinks that's why she acts like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Just became numb and फिर वो numbness से उसका reactions आ रहा था तो
Yeah, मुझे भी I resonate with स्तुति कि you cannot जिस तरह से वो on off relationship उनका चलता है ना इतना easily they are into the relationship out of it so deep so out कि मतलब अभी तो they are going to be just together for life and deep souls हाँ और फिर अचानक they are out of it तो फिर मुझे भी ये लगा कि ठीक है वो background is of abusive father abusive brother mother who is indifferent or who tries to belittle it. It cannot be so small. मतलब Marianne's personality मुझे लग रहा है कि इतनी weird है. Of course, the background of course matters. But मुझे लग रहा है और वो कॉनल के भी जो personal issues होते हैं ठीक है इसकी वजह से भी इनके रिलेशनशिप ऐसे होंगे बट हाँ जो एंडिंग में बाद में मुझे लगा कि मे बी वी कैन पिन पॉइंट बट नॉट एग्जैक्टली माय हार्ट डज नॉट अलाउ मी टू पिन पॉइंट टू दोज अब्यूजिव बैकग्राउंड्स और ही इज एन इलेजिट चाइल्ड ही डज नॉट नो अबाउट हिज फादर वो सब अभी भी मुझे आई डू नॉट बाय दैट स्टोरी दैट इज टू सिंपल जिस तरह के वो उनके रिलेशन ऐसे तो इतने इजीली दे आर इनटू फिजिकल रिलेशनशिप बहुत इजीली दे कम टुगेदर बहुत इजीली दे गेट आउट ऑफ ईच अदर तो मुझे लगता है देयर आर मोर कॉम्प्लेक्सिटीज देन व्हाट मीट्स द आई which we have not been able to read. I don't know, maybe that's it.
Those are very interesting points actually. And coming from a different generation, काफी अच्छा पर्सपेक्टिव मिलता है उस चीज से कि ये क्या क्या कर रहे बच्चे आजकल के.
I feel like, so first of all, to be very upfront, I do not particularly read books like these. I'm a very Holocaust and partition literature gal who reads a lot of non-fiction. So this was not something, मतलब romance अगर किसी बुक में लिखा हो तो मैं भाग जाती हूँ उस बुक को देख के. I'm like नहीं ये नहीं हो सकता बिल्कुल भी. But then I saw like a lot of people had a lot of good things and a lot of wacky things to say about the book. So I was like, okay, why not? So I feel like it was a very interesting experiment, a very interesting sociological. Yeah, you did. Experiment. So I particularly saw the confluence of nature and nurture and class and identity. Like these are some themes that I saw were very prominent, right? तो आपके जो बेसिक ये होती है रोमांस बुक उसमें क्या होता है कि लाइक एवरीथिंग फिट्स इनटू द पिक्चर तो आप गरीब हो आप रिच हो none of that matters because true love and all that is going to conquer everything. But I feel like this book was very realistic in terms of how childhood trauma is going to leave a very scarred identity for you which you're going to not only project but also you're going to kind of do stuff to kind of escape that. So I see like Marianne, even though she recognizes that her family treats her poorly, that she's very smart, right? She explicitly says to Connell that like my dad used to hit me, my brother does this, my mom does this. There are several instances, but then to just kind of escape that, she still goes for people who would treat her that way. Like that is, like I really want to understand her psyche in that aspect as to why would you kind of debase yourself because that is an escape route for you. That is something I do want to understand. Um, Also identity, right? How they're so fluid. So Connell was so popular in school and then he became a loner and his entire identity revolved around who Marianne was, right? So even that your identity is so fluid, it's so easily shaped by external factors. Like these were really interesting things that I read, and just how deep the book was, right? Like I remember this one, like a couple of quotes that just really messed up my mind. Wait, I think I've written them somewhere. Yeah, Marianne had the sense that her real life was happening somewhere very far away, happening without her, and she didn't know if she would ever find out where it was or became part of it or become part of it. I think these are some quotes that just really got to me. Um, yeah, like those are my 2 cents from the book. Didn't really expect the book to turn out this way, but I just love how real it was. And even in the end, when Connell is supposed to leave, Marion just knows, right, that they're bonded for life or whatever that equation is, and it's going to be that way throughout their life. So even though I wanted a very happy ending for them, but like let's face it, it's not something that is going to happen in real life.
Some reason it felt like reading somebody's diary. कैसे उनका डे टू डे एक्टिविटीज ऐसे पढ़ रहे हो विदाउट फीलिंग एन एक्चुअल, मतलब मेरे को आई डिडंट फील एन एक्चुअल कनेक्ट विद द कैरेक्टर्स बिकॉज दैट्स नॉट समथिंग आई रिलेट टू. हाँ, बट ऐसे लगा कि यू आर जस्ट गेटिंग योरसेल्फ इन्वॉल्वड इनटू देयर लाइव्स एंड फॉर सम रीजन वो I was seeing the show का ऐसे थोड़े clips ऐसे, and show का vibe completely मतलब मेरे को अलग लगा. If you read the entire book, वो the vibe it sets is kind of dark. मतलब if you visualize it, मतलब मेरे को ऐसा लगा, visualizing while reading the book, it felt like it would be set in some kind of a dark scenario, पूरा lights बंद करके ऐसा कुछ, because most of it revolves उनके room के अंदर, उनके night clubs में और उनका जो party होता रहता है. But most of the visuals which I saw of the show were like quite bright and kind of colorful, I would say. And the writing style too. I think the book went into a lot of detail. Some might even say unnecessary. Like आज सुबह ही मैं complete कर रहा था, and one line just like threw me off completely. वो जब last chapter में जब they both are in their room and Marianne goes to brush and there is a line mentioned कि वो precision से वो drain में थूक देती है toothpaste. मतलब मेरे को समझ में आया क्यों रखा, but okay, good to know.
I agree. I also remember तूने बोला ना, I also remember एक part था where who's that friend of theirs who used to go to party a lot with them. She asks Marianne that are you guys sleeping with each other or something. So she says yes of course. उसके साथ में they are juxtaposing that conversation with this
The
guy.
beer bottle ka.
Beer bottle is
Yeah.
this thing. And that was very interesting how the entire thing like वो निकालने की कोशिश कर रहा है, फिर थोड़ा निकला, and उसने ज्यादा डिटेल दे दिया, उसके टाइम पे उसका पूरा निकाल दिया उसने भूल से. So they're mixing it up nicely, which was interesting, and I like the fact. So I don't think the book, it's not, it focused on the narrative less on the way it's written, in the sense that it didn't go for those punchline dialogues that at the end of the chapter, for example, कि वो or those linking वो जो होते हैं क्या, I don't know what that exactly is called, but it didn't have that, which is very interesting, because sometimes you relate to certain books with those specific dialogues or with those specific lines, and this did not rely on that, which was very interesting. I don't know if that's very common or not, but काफी interesting लगा था मेरे को देख. So I was thinking, let's talk a little bit about characters specifically. तो Connell की थोड़ी बात करते हैं. What is his biggest insecurity? What is the person really like? मतलब उसकी जो भी insecurities है, उसका root cause क्या है? Is it daddy issues? Is it something else? Is it उसके कहाँ से insecurity develop हो रही है? And why does he really care about what people think about him and his relationship with people, specifically Marianne?
I think like his class is something that he actually in a lot of places denies that it matters to him, but I think somewhere it affects him. And like I think there's one dialogue where Rob or someone, I think his friend, says that your mom cleans the house, her house, right, or something like that. So I think little comments like that affect him, and though he doesn't really admit it, मुझे लगता है कि it somewhere makes him insecure about his whatever image in school and in the public, how people look at him. And so he's also, I think, as I think Riya was saying, is a passive person. He's not someone who speaks too much, but he actually cares a lot about what everyone thinks about him, how society looks at him, the friends he makes, the people he hangs out with, and things like that. So I think class is a root, and just I think as a person, he is a bit of an anxious person. Like there's a part where I think after the Debs or something where where no after a party he drives her home and then his friends are sort of teasing him with her and he just goes to the washroom or something and he completely breaks down. And to us it might seem ridiculous a little bit, not ridiculous, but like is he overreacting to this? But he is just a very anxious person, and at that point he just feels really attacked. So yeah, that's what I think.
Adding to what Nilima said, I feel like he is someone who cares too much and indulges too much about what people conceive of him as a person, right? Even when he's in school, just the idea of him hooking up with Marianne, even though I don't know how it started, whether it was something he felt that, this is one weird chick and I just want to try this, whatever. Like, I don't know that reasoning. But anyway, like, he was very concerned about, like, even when he outright told her that he loves her, even then, when his friends would make fun of her, he would not like participate. He'd still try to kind of show this image that he's with that other popular chick. What was her name? Rachel or something. I don't know.
Rachel.
Rachel.
Yeah,
Helen.
yeah, yeah,
Always
yeah.
Rachel.
हाँ तो मतलब ऐसे कि पॉपुलर बंदा है वो एकदम ऐसे बेस्ट लड़की के साथ ही जाता है. Even in college, he was very concerned about what people thought of him, what Marianne's friends thought of him. Uh, like everywhere, I feel like he's constantly struggled with how people perceive him, and that has become especially difficult because he was very comfortable who he was as a person. He didn't have to put in a lot of effort, right, to become popular in school, but then that completely switched in college. So I feel like that is one issue, and I think that is also a very big element that has always caused uproar and like stored up troubles in the relationship he shares with Marianne, because it's always about this is like our equation, but log kya sochenge? Like I remember even I think there was a pool scene where it was the first time that he actually was affectionate towards her in public. Like he kissed her shoulder. So like that was the first time, but even though they've known each other for so many years, so I feel like that is one big red flag.
Yeah, I just think that he used to thrive on external validation in school. तो उसको पूरा टाइम बेस्ट गर्ल्स मिलती थी, was good at sports also, so मैच जिताया था कुछ तो. So all the time he was surrounded by a lot of validation and everyone used to make him feel good that oh you're Connell, you're very nice, you're ये वो. And then like she said, when he went to high school कोई था नहीं उसको इतना बोलने वाला. So he sort of was, missing that validation. And then he realized that, yeah, it doesn't matter. And then that is why, he was like, okay, Marianne ke saath, even if I had been with Marianne back in school, kuch farak nahi padta.
There was this one line, because you're talking about this. This is, I think, my favorite part of the entire book, but it's very relatable and it's very, you really get to understand the transition that is happening with him when he's going from school to college and क्यों हो रहा है वो. What are really his inhibitions? So उसमें I think he talked. यहाँ पे एक part था. If anything, his personality seemed like something external to himself, managed by the opinions of others rather than anything he individually did or produced. Now he has a sense of invisibility, nothingness, with no reputation to recommend him to anyone. And it's आगे और भी है थोड़ा, but it just really summarizes me for me really well. जो श्रुति ने भी बताया अभी properly.
So you know how Stuti and Niyanta talked about how he thrives on validation, right? I think the problem is that when he was in school, he never realized I thrive on it. Like in school, the popularity was very natural to him. He never put an effort to it. So वो, unknowingly खुश था with all his validation, his popularity. And then when he goes to college and he sees, it's not the same and I will actually have to put efforts to do this, then he realizes, that what he had been thriving on all this while. And it's weird that he knows that him craving it isn't really important because validation isn't important, but at the same, like he's aware of that, but he still craves it. So like that's one thing that I find interesting about him. And you just read a quote about how his personality felt external to him, and I think there was something. I remember this line because it felt really funny. There was this line ki Connell wished that he could watch people how they conduct themselves in their private life, so that he could copy them and learn how to behave himself. And so basically, like Marianne was the kind of person who was like, she was content with being quote unquote different or weird in the sense of other people's eyes, whereas Connell just constantly wanted to make himself more acceptable to the society around him. And obviously his class kind of played that pressure, especially when he went to Trinity. So he had that whole thing that he has that accent, he's from this rural place, and he obviously doesn't want that to be his only identity. He wants to be known that he's a smart guy, he reads a lot. But then he was never able to show it off like those other people.
I don't know if he got a proper closure or whether it was really required, whether as to who his dad really was. But I think the root cause, according to me, to every male problem in this entire world is daddy issues. So, matlab, I'm really trying to figure out कि उसका क्या influence रहा होगा, and if he would have gotten more exposition into what his dad was like or क्या था वो. Maybe a little more about Lauren separately from her relationship with his son. I don't know. Like a little bit more insight into that might have helped me understand better what kind of upbringing this guy has had. इतना मुझे पता है कि she's a young mother and they don't talk about their dad, and it's never come up properly. And she's a very liberal and they have a very casual, nice, open relationship. That's very wonderful to see. बहुत बढ़िया था वो देखने में. But my entire question was, would it have really increased an understanding of his inhibitions and also of Lauren for that matter, if she had any, if they had given us more insights into who she was earlier or what her husband, but what the father was. So that, I think that would have really made things more interesting for me to understand. Yes, Alish.
I also felt that the author focused much on Connell and Marianne's life rather than मतलब उनके families को explore किए बिना. तो हाँ, we could have gotten a more detailed picture of why they behave the way they behave if we would have gotten a little more insight into their behavior at home. Like ये Lorraine और Connell के बीच में जो behavior है, and especially with उसका भाई का नाम क्या, एलन. मतलब स्टार्टिंग में बोलते हैं, मैरियन बोलती है कि या माय हाउसहोल्ड इज अब्यूसिव, वो प्यार नहीं करते घर पे एंड वो सब, बट द एक्चुअल एक्सटेंट ऑफ अब्यूज इज ओनली शोन एट द एंड जब वो बियर बॉटल फेंकता है. तो आई गेस अगर थोड़ा और उसमें डीपर डाइव करते तो इट वुड हैव प्रोबेबली गिवन अस मोर क्लूज अबाउट व्हाई दे बिहेव सो पैसिवली, व्हाई वो ऐसा बिहेव करते हैं, ऑल ऑफ दैट.
Probably. For some reason, even though it's not related genre-wise, but Mayor of Easttown करके एक show है, ठीक है? So it's about Easttown, ठीक है? There are individual stories going around, but it somehow wraps around and talks about the entire town and about every person and their inhibitions, every person and their arcs. So I was actually expecting this to be a story of that particular town rather than just those two people. For example, I would have liked to know Alan and his stuff better. I'm not trying to create a sympathetic element to it all the time. वैसे नहीं बोल रहा. Maybe होता ठीक रहता, but I would have liked an exploration of the people, not just two people. More people is what I'm talking about. Maybe all the other friends they had, where they came from, and probably उनके क्या inhibitions थे. I don't know. थोड़ा मतलब indulgence I just felt was a little more, which made some aspects of the narrative a little more repetitive for me, which could have really been dispersed if there was more focus on Lorraine and her mom, Marianne's mom, and other people to understand the place better and कि उसका क्या influence रहा होगा शायद इन पे, because I just knew it's a small town, ठीक है, smaller town, and they went to a different place, जो बड़ा से बड़ा, but a little bit more about what is the personality of the town itself, what might have made them the way they were. Maybe. Niyanta?
Yeah, just want to bring up two quick points. So first, I think that is the problem with a limited series like these, right? It's one standalone novel. So I feel like it's not possible to cover everything. Like, as much as a reader would want to understand, like, this is a problem I've consistently faced while reading a lot of books, especially Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Water. I always wonder, what is this person doing? It's a lot of things, and you want to know more, right? But that's a problem, right? The second is, like, as much as I understand that, they're both of these protagonists, their identities um, were also a function of their families, especially, and their peer group. More than that, I feel like the book is a journey, is a narrative of how two people base their identities around each other. So, like, these two are the central people, and whatever happens with one, it is going to reflect in the other. So, like, it's that journey. So, as much as we understand that other people also have a very profound influence on them, these two are the main, these two have the most profound impact on each other, which I think is why they've particularly talked about these two, and not about why Alan is the way he is, why the dad is absent in the family picture, all of that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was just saying. Okay, I think what Nyanta was saying is sort of right. Ki it's like I think her intention was to focus on these two people, and that's completely fine because the focus was on these two people, their relationship, and there are moments when it becomes a little frustrating. Ki, "Arey yaar, phir se these people are messing it up," but still, it's also I think real in a certain way, the problems they face, the insecurities they have, and all. But the only thing I felt was, especially how cruel and abusive and violent Marianne's family was. It seemed like it was done just for the convenience of the narrative. So, they are this cruel, and so Connell comes and helps her. So, I think, as you were saying, if it was maybe a little more, there was more detail about that, it wouldn't have been like it just came up just to create some problem for her, but as something that was naturally there as a part of the narrative. The second thing is, this is just a line that I just really, really liked from the book. Ek minute, I have it. I'll just read it out. It's called, and this is basically, I think, what sums up how Marianne feels frustrated about it, where she says, um, there's always been something inside her that men have wanted to dominate, and their desire for domination can look so much like attraction, even love. And I think this is like it's such a good line, and it says so much about like a lot of the relationships that are portrayed in our films and everything. So I think that was a line that I really liked.
The fact you mentioned, iske pehla the point you mentioned about the family thing, it wouldn't have really hampered anything. I really believe that because I would have liked to know how her mom perceived herself, and maybe she also had that same sense of self-hatred, or maybe her husband treated her a certain way, so which is why she treated a certain way, herself a certain way, and maybe which is why she didn't like her daughter. Like, क्यों पसंद नहीं थे, क्या था, just about that.
Yeah, she's very, very cold and almost villainous in a way, which seems a little. Yeah, exactly.
So basically, I think her mother was cold towards her because she hadn't dealt with her own trauma. Because sometimes that happens, right? That you, like, she was domestically abused by her husband. Her son is no different. He's also an abuser. The only way that she can tolerate the abuse is ignore it or repress it, which is what she's doing, which is what she doesn't communicate with Marianne. If she has to do that with her, then she has to face her own trauma, which a lot of survivors, I would say, don't want to do. I don't know, because like it makes them relive their memories, and it, like, if you don't have professional help, then I don't think that confronting your own trauma directly by yourself is such a good idea, because you don't know how to channel it. I don't know much about it. I'm just assuming psychology people know better. But I just think that she behaved that way with Marianne because she was treated like that by her husband, and trauma affects you in certain ways. I think it makes you look out for self-preservation. Either you do that, otherwise you become overtly protective of your kid. I think she did the latter. So that's why I'm not justifying what she did, but this can be a possible explanation as to why she was so cold towards Marianne.
Also, sorry,
Yeah.
but yeah, since you've also seen the show and all, you know that the actors are so good in that show that sometimes a single expression that they give or an extra dialogue, sometimes it makes you guess what their past could have been like, which in the book isn't like explicitly stated. So also the book made I think other people are also saying that the language was very passive. There were like really short sentences that were written. It was not like long descriptions of anyone's feelings or anything like that. So it almost felt in some places like there was the author was like detached from the characters that she created herself. So I felt that maybe because of that there were moments when I felt like in the show where I felt a lot of sympathy for a character. Probably when I read it, it didn't feel as emotional because of a style of writing. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad style of writing that everyone should write in long sentences and paragraphs and it should be like a 500 pages book or something like that. But I'm saying that because of the style, I think it does have some negative this thing also. The way we look at the characters.
So, like, have you noticed how Sally Rooney doesn't put her sentences in quotations? तो अगर कोई बात कर रहा है तो वो ऐसे ही sentence में जाता है. Is there any significance attached to it, or is it just a very passive way of writing? Is there a deeper meaning to it? या ये लिखती है ऐसी? मेरे को तो बहुत annoying लगा ये आप
बहुत
sentences
ज्यादा
डालते रहे साथ
annoying.
में.
I'm so sorry to
I
cut you
don't
off.
know.
Before we talk about the significance of it, I went through 4 PDF versions. मुझे लगा मेरी copy में कोई defect है. I was very irritated by it.
If you
Yeah, is
if you
there
look at Jhumpa Lahiri's style also, she writes like that. All her books, dialogue is not in
Had
quotations.
quotation marks. I'm sure
So
it had.
I think, like, I personally like that style because, like, maybe she's one of my favorite authors. I didn't find it irritating. It's just maybe they write like that because they want us to be observers and not participants. Like someone had said, I think that you don't relate to the characters. It feels like you're reading a diary, which is what I think she wants us to do. Because like I don't think it's voyeuristic because voyeuristic takes on a very sexual perspective, but it's sort of like that. Like there is a window, there is a house that all of this is happening, and we're just sitting outside on a chair and watching what is happening. That's why she narrates instances like this that they are saying. So there is never that active presence of quotation marks that you are watching, like you are part of the dialogue that is happening, so you don't feel like a participant in it. Maybe that's why she doesn't write in quotations. That's a pretty prominent style that a lot of writers use.
And I think what happens with that is that like psychologically it can also create this impact that with the fluidity between the characters and the narrator, like they are constantly together and different people and together and different people. Like at times the narrator is justifying their actions by giving them dialogues in a certain way, and sometimes opposing that as well. So I like that style in the sense that it's very fluid in terms of who the narrator is and who the this thing is. I think Sarish is trying to say something.
So I also find like ye style, it was very refreshing for me, and moreover with the lack of quotation marks, you start reading the sentence and after the end of the sentence you realize ki, oh, this is actually something spoken by the character. So that way you have like a kind of double realization ki after you read it you then realize ki, oh, this part is supposed to be placed here, वैसे. So in a sense it helped me like sort of read it more carefully rather than just agar quotations hote to normally the way I read it I just skim through the entire thing in quotations and I get a rough feeling for it, but this kind of forced me to read it more carefully, the entire book.
That's a very interesting perspective.
Also, like just to add on this, I feel like just like dialogue hai isliye thoda related. So I feel like what Connell is trying to say is very sincere, but what he actually says comes off as unsincere to Marianne because he thinks a lot before he talks. So it's like ऐसा वो पूरा गल के जो आता है, मतलब it's like trickle down economic sort of thing. Like he thinks so much is a lot of feeling, there's a lot of depth, but eventually what comes out is a line. It's like, all right. So, like, probably the author would want, I don't know, us to sort of go inside their brain a little. If she was writing in quotation marks, then probably it would have been thoda sa, like Kritika said, thoda barrier between dialogue and thought, but maybe she wants us to seamlessly, like you said, flow between narrative and dialogue. Maybe that's why she did that.
Does anyone talk about the relationship between Lorraine and what's the name, Connell, and what do you understand out of their relationship? Bhumika, yeah.
I first thought that this woman will come out as preachy, but she is pretty balanced, and जहाँ पे जितनी जरूरत हुई है उसने उतना ही बोला है. But like when you see that one person is clearly more wise, I felt वो थोड़ा और उसको advise करके और बता सकती थी. Because she literally knew everything. Like she was like that god figure in the book जिसको पता है कहाँ कहाँ क्या हो रहा है, and she had the ability also to say the right thing at the right time, but and not even overdoing it. But yeah, they didn't utilize that her character so well. Like maybe she wasn't there in the book, even जितने dialogue थे उसके, the book would have been the same, because she didn't bring a significant turn in the plot of the book at anywhere. She was just a supporting character, but supporting character with no cause and effect.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I think she did not probably bring about some sort of dramatic turn, but she's an important influence, right? Like, she's the one who probably is the first person to tell Connell. She even shouts at him, gets out of the car, and says, "I'll walk home." So she is very firm about some things, and she's open, I think, as you were saying earlier, and she wants her son to sort of be on the right path or something, but she's also not the kind of person who will sort of be preachy and give lectures to her son. She wants to guide him, but at the same time wants him to be independent in his own way. So she's a supporting character, and maybe she didn't like directly involve herself into the plot in the sense that she didn't do anything that caused a change in their lives, but she was an important influence for Connell, and that's what I feel.
Yeah, it surely was. Surely was. I mean, I'm just trying to frame a question here. बहुत ही rhetoric है, ठीक है, and बहुत ही pretentious लगेगा सुनने में भी. But I'm just trying to make some sense of that. I've seen this as a tendency, not just in stories, like of hate stories, but in life as well, about how I don't know if there's a problem of plenty out there in terms of or I don't know what exactly it is, but why do we treat ourselves the way we treat ourselves? I think the book is really about that for me. Is it something very new, the kind of existentialism these people are facing, or they are not confronting at times as well? They're indulging in, I don't know, recreational drugs and this and that. So they're not confronting that reality of their lives. So some people are getting really transitioning into becoming an introverted person suddenly out of going to college. Is it a very modern thing that's coming in recently, or this was a problem that you think is persistent all throughout? Saresh?
Yeah, so I think the reason why we treat ourselves the way we treat ourselves is all dependent on our self-image, like how we perceive ourselves. And I can probably relate this to क्या वो triangle होता है क्या, Maslow का hierarchy, where there are different levels of your well-being, वो सब. So yeah, that I guess also comes into play, where like based on how secure you are about your existence, that changes the way you treat yourself. Like if you are very secure and you are towards your path of क्या होता है पर self-actualization वो सब, then you place yourself on a pedestal, you treat yourself better.
And anyone else, any thoughts on this? Because I genuinely feel sad for these people and people around me as well. And कितना impressionable है already हम लोग इतने ideas के साथ में, political ideas, other sort of ideas and ideologies, इतना सब घिरे हुए हैं. And you have to take a side. you have to be someone, you have to have a certain image or a certain, you have to fit somewhere, you have to find your niche. And all these people in the entire story are trying to fit that bill that they are creating for themselves, and trying to fit into that.
A lot of people are struggling with such things where they're not the smarter ones, or even if they are the smarter ones, they get they get intimidated by the different smart levels of smartness. Sometimes in parties, extroverts are smart. In some places, intelligent people are smart. So that's why, she's just given the title normal people, because these are people who are right here in front of us. And in different places, different people are normal. So yeah.
I agree. Like, I think it is very a common thing in Indian culture, like why we treat the way we treat ourselves. Like, people have a lot of influence on us, our family, relations, etc. So life is all about people who are around us. And when we try to explore, so after some age, we try to explore, we try to get that awareness. And then the battle starts, like it's constant battle between how your family thinks you are and how you think you have to be. So I guess that is the battle everyone has to fight in our culture, and it is not at all today's thing. It has happened the way it has happened. So I guess that is the reason. And then we like to help people, like you should treat yourself that way, you don't know your potential. But then it is again gets difficult to apply it on ourselves, because it is so inculcated in us that it gets difficult after some point. But then every day is a new battle you have to fight.
Also because we are living in a society, like in a modern society, in an urban society, where and this is a very global thing, I'm not specifically talking about the place they were or where we are, a place where we believe in the ideals of liberalism, of democracy, individualism, and all of that. So eventually it comes down to the fact that I decide how I live my life.
Yeah.
The libertarian free will wala philosophy jo aa jata hai pura, free will philosophy ki you decide how you live, you make your own choices. So वो सुनने में भी अच्छा है, but it adds a lot of pressure to that as well.
Exactly.
That's the narrative we are living at the moment. So it adds a lot of pressure to that. कि मतलब I decide, कोई मेरे लिए करके नहीं देने वाला है. So that's also यहाँ पे situation, like Lauren is not proactively involved in deciding कि वो क्या पढ़ेगा क्या नहीं पढ़ेगा या सब, and that's good. And that is also a very interesting pressure that is very invisible. Probably your parents are not going to push your youth in that sense, but it's another sort of invisible pressure that comes in from everybody else but your parents.
I was also feeling that social media is such a big part of it, because I think that because of social media, everyone feels like they need to project themselves in a certain way, or there's pressure to look a certain way, speak a certain way, and there's pressure to speak about something or not speak about something. And with things like that, we also have too many other people telling us how we should treat ourselves, the decisions we should take, how we should react to things, how we should look at ourselves. So because of that, I feel wait, this novel is set in the 90s. Yeah, is it a 2000s?
It's a 2010, like early 2010.
Okay, I somehow thought it was set pehle. Sorry, yeah. But yeah, so this is clearly like the internet wala generation only, even the novel and us also. So I feel that also affects the way we look at ourselves and the way we treat ourselves, what we think we deserve, what we think we don't deserve.
I was going to pick up from the social media thing, right? Like that's so very common now. I don't think in the novel that rampant, because just with the social media it's not very that. But then the thing is even if people don't like tell us how to treat ourselves, so and I read this thing like a long time back that even if people are not really judging us, we are telling ourselves that people are constantly judging us. Everybody is busy doing their own thing, but we want to think that everyone has the time to judge us. Like unko dusra kuch kaam nahi hai, they want to judge us. But the point is that so we think we treat ourselves with the same standards कि वो हमें ऐसे treat करेंगे, तो I don't deserve any better than how I would be externally treated. Like most people, what we end up doing is we never treat ourselves better than how the world treats us. We always treat ourselves worse than how the world treats us, and that's kind of like obviously pretty sad. Because your own self needs to be like your own hype person, but it's never like that. So obviously that's there. And then this is this constant thing of like standards and comparing and never being able to live up to it and constantly. And so Sankalp was like, is this a recent thing? So there's this thing that a lot of people do very recently, and um, you can call it self-depreciative humor, you can call it modesty, but then constantly, people make jokes on themselves and put themselves down, even if they are genuinely good at something. And I don't think ये पहले होता था, but अभी बहुत होता है, especially people my age. Like even if they're good at something, they'll just, even if it's as a joke, they'll constantly put themselves down. Like it's a thing. It didn't happen before, but it happens now.
नहीं, I think it has been like a thing. मैंने याद है हिप्पी मूवी में that girl was very fat, but she was like मैं अपना मजाक पहले ही बना लेती हूँ, इससे पहले सब मेरा मजाक उड़ाए, मैं खुद का मजाक उड़ा देती हूँ. So
No, but what I'm trying to say is, even if someone's good at a particular thing, like even if you're good at it, they will never outrightly, be satisfied कि yes, I am good at it. Like अगर कोई वो topic पे बात हो रही है, they will still put themselves down, even though they know that they're good at it, but they won't have like they won't somehow get themselves to say it. Does that make
I
sense? I
think
don't
that
know.
uncertainty of being able to completely ace it is the thing. Like I remember in college, I used to be very good at microfiction. TTT में ऐसे publish भी हो गई थी. But when people used to say, "Oh wow, we saw you on TTT," I was like, "Oh yeah, it's just a casual thing." I never took it seriously. Never did I ever tell even कि मैंने कितनी मेहनत की थी उस पे. 4 बार तो मैंने एडिट किया था, 3 बार उन लोग ने एडिट किया, फिर जाके वो एक 4 लाइन का माइक्रोफिक्शन बना है. So when people told me, "अरे हाँ, it's just a casual thing," ऐसे ही हो गया. Because now they might expect me to okay, I will continue getting featured there. But वैसा मुझे तो पता था ना कि नहीं होने वाला है. So I myself down pay well so that बाद में expectation ना बढ़ जाए और मेरी identity फिर उसी चीज से ना define होने लगे.
I just read out one paragraph in the book that was there just after he had shifted to the college गया था वो पहली बार. तो उसी के वहाँ पे अराउंड एक पैराग्राफ था, बहुत मुझे अच्छा लगा था वो. It's about what you're talking about at the moment, about how you maintain individuality in a place where everyone's trying to maintain that, but सबके पास हाथ में MacBook है. All Connell's classmates have identical accents and carry the same sized MacBook under their arms. In seminars, they express their opinions passionately and conduct impromptu debates. Unable to form such straightforward views or express them with any force, Connell initially felt a sense of crushing inferiority to his fellow students, as if he had upgraded himself accidentally to an intellectual level far above his own, where he had to strain to make sense of the most basic premises. He did gradually start to wonder why all their classroom discussions were so abstract, lacking in textual detail, and eventually he realized that most people were not actually doing the reading. They were coming into college every day to have heated debates about books they had not read. He understands now that his classmates are not like him. It's easy for them to have opinions and to express them with confidence. They don't worry about appearing ignorant or conceited. They're not stupid people, but they're not so much smarter than him either. They just move through the world in a different way, and he'll probably never understand them, and he knows they will never understand him or even try. So ये part वो काफी ज़्यादा hit किया था. If you got a chance, how differently would you have named the book? I would have named it Anxious People. अगर पेटेंट नहीं लिया होता उसने फ्रेडरिक बैकमैन ने. Any ideas you have about what do you think about the title? Let's say normal people के बारे में आपके क्या views है about the title?
Oh, one thing I remember from the book, in the first, I think within the first 10 chapters only, it's mentioned that she was reading a book called Swan's Day, which is Proust's first book. And I've told you about Proust. Proust is this author which writes, but he's the person Virginia Woolf has been inspired by. So he writes on the lines of, there's a specific genre for it. Consciousness से खेलता है Proust.
Stream of consciousness, yeah.
Stream of consciousness, yes. So I thought कितनी self aware होगी यार मेरी आंटी जब वो Proust जैसा बुक पढ़ सकती है. But अलग ही फिर tangent है.
Shraddha, you were saying about your favorite title, your title.
Yeah, I'm sorry about last night. Like sorry word has came so many times in this book. It's like that only.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting title.
I think I would name it In and Out. ये लोग हर चीज में जा रहे हैं फिर बाहर निकल रहे हैं, जा रहे हैं फिर बाहर निकल रहे हैं. It's
उसके
not
बाद
just
चल गया
Connell and Marianne. That's
that had a name.
But like, so would you call Marianne and Connell the normal people of this book, or would you call them the not so normal people in contrast of the normal people usually there? Like, do Marianne and Connell qualify as normal people to you? Is that why the title is Normal People, or are they contrasting characters to otherwise normal people?
I think they are the normalest of people that can ever be produced on the planet Earth. Yeah, I think they fit the bill or the template of what a normal person is called in today's world. The normal people definition, I think, changes with time. Today's definition is exactly what they are at this point. They are going through a certain phase of their lives and they are going through it in and out properly. मतलब पूरा घुसे. अगर दारू पिया तो इज्जत से पूरा पिया. And अगर कुछ और करे तो पूरा उसमें घुसे. So these fluctuations, I think, make them the normalest of people ever. We are focusing on them because we are magnifying their stories and breaking it down completely. मतलब उनके एकदम वजूद तक जा रहे हैं हम लोग पूरे अंदर से. इसलिए हम लोग को लग रहा है कि but I think they are the normalest of people ever to walk the face of earth. At least in today's modern capitalism वाले दुनिया.
It depends on people whom you are with. So Marianne and Connell के आजू बाजू वाले जो लोग थे, they weren't considering them normal. Marianne को हर कोई आके बोलता था, यार, you need a therapist, you need help. So I guess that's how you get to portray people कि ये normal है या नहीं. If she had different set of friends or people around her, then they would have thought that she is normal, he is normal in that way.
A while ago I mentioned कि ये novel में बहुत ज़्यादा unnecessary detail है ना. Is that detail on purpose to like emphasize the fact that these people are quite normal and they go about with their normal activities in their day-to-day normal lives?
Makes a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, I guess.
That's a very good point, actually. It keeps them, it does not raise them to a certain pedestal and their situation to a certain pedestal. It brings them down to, it distills it to the reality में कैसे होता होगा ना, to the world, the course of reality में उनको set up कर देते हैं in context, I think.
So Abhishek, Shraddha was talking about how people around Marianne would tell her that she needs to see a therapist. Now, in a book where both of these characters are supposedly woke, they are well-read, they, talk about all kinds of things, why couldn't she actually take a step to actually see a therapist? Because she knows she needs it. Like, why?
I'll tell you, therapy ना अभी common हुआ है post pandemic उतना ज़्यादा. उससे पहले very less people work actually even.
But Connell went to that weird school thing, which I'm sure was of no help. Yeah. But he
2013, 14, very rare. Therapy was very rare.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I also have a question. कि जो फोटोग्राफर वाला कैरेक्टर इंट्रोड्यूस्ड हुआ था तो उसका क्या पर्पस था? I didn't understand.
तो बहुत creepy था वो chapter. I was just like, what?
But वो उसी एक चैप्टर के लिए था वो बंदा. उसके आगे पीछे कुछ
I have a theory of why the photographer was actually there.
Okay.
Because जब उसका नाम क्या था उसका पहले बॉयफ्रेंड का जेमी.
Okay, जेमी. हाँ.
With Jamie उसने बोला था कि she wanted to be slapped, she wanted to be उसको submissive बनना था. But when एक बंदा एक्चुअली उसको सबमिसिव बनाता है, उसको ऐसे इंस्ट्रक्शंस फॉलो करवाता है, उससे ब्लाइंड्स वो सब बनवाता है, she realizes कि something is wrong, कि उसको she is not meant to be that way. मतलब she liked the idea of it, but when somebody actually made her do those things, उसको अच्छा नहीं लगा. So probably वो आर्क के लिए था वो.
But guys, if you guys want to wrap up with the conversation by talking about your favorite, I don't know, your favorite quotes or your favorite thoughts or what you're going to leave with when you end the book, or या फिर याद कैसे रहेगी आपको ये book? Bhumika, yeah.
I think I will, in any young adult novel, the only meta I live for is ऐसे random abstract topics जो आ जाते हैं जिनका कोई लेना देना नहीं है book से, but they are just amazing thoughts. There are two thoughts that came up. एक वो time versus money वाला. I think that is Dhwani का भी favorite. The plot is where Joanna is telling Marianne about her job, and I think they're in a supermarket or something, or they're talking when she's just roaming around
Read
in
it
the
out.
supermarket. On the phone, Joanna frequently describes her office, the various characters who work there, the dramas that erupt between them, and it's as if she's a citizen of a country Marianne has never visited, the country of paid employment. Marianne replaces the yogurt pot in the freezer now and asks Joanna if she finds it strange to be paid for her hours at work, to exchange, in other words, blocks of her extremely limited time on this earth for the human invention known as money. It's time you'll never get back, Marianne adds. I mean, the time is real. The money is also real. Well, but the time is more real. Time consists of physics, money is just a social construct. Yes, but I'm still alive at work, says Joanna. It's still me. I'm still having experiences. You're not working, okay, but the time is passing for you too. You'll never get it back either. But I can decide what I want, what I do with it. To that, I would venture that your decision making is also a social construct. So probably everything is a social construct.
Yeah.
But it was actually an intriguing debate. I also have this debate quite often with my own self. But I think, yeah, this debate can never happen between two people. It will always happen within a person and his internal self.
He knows that a lot of the literary people in college see books primarily as a way of appearing cultured. It was culture as class performance. Literature fetishized for its ability to take educated people on false emotional journeys so that they might afterwards feel superior to the uneducated people whose emotional journeys they like to read about. Even if the writer himself was a good person, even if his books really were insightful, all books were ultimately marketed as status symbols, and all writers participated to some degree in this marketing. Literature, in the way it appeared at these public readings, had no potential as a form of resistance to anything.
I somehow felt ki both the main characters kind of did not grow at the end of it. मतलब यूजुअली ऐसा लगता है कि मतलब इन एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ बुक और स्टोरी यू सी सम सॉर्ट ऑफ ग्रोथ कि पूरा इतना चुतियाप हुआ कुछ तो एंड में सीखे होंगे बट नहीं दीज पीपल कुछ सीखे ही नहीं दे एट द एंड the so-called abrupt ending is just cycling back to where it started. It's just another cycle which is going to repeat itself.
I disagree with that. I think थोड़ा development तो है, थोड़ा communicate तो किया है that if you want me to stay, I'll stay. Although क्या अच्छा है क्या बुरा है वो अभी भी नहीं पता है उन लोग को एक दूसरे के लिए, but I think थोड़ा development तो है. पहली बार जब break आया था वो absolute अलग tangent पे communication level थी, but इस बार थोड़ा communicate तो किया है. हाँ growth नहीं होगी वो, this is an additional communication I think. Growth probably नहीं है.
Crash course पूरा हो गया लोग.
Yeah, crash course हुआ है, main course नहीं हुआ. True.
I would still say there's like some amount of growth, and if not growth, at least there's a realization on their parts of how they have, of stuff they've done before or how wrong they've been before. Like there's some sort of self-realization, even if not growth. But I would say there is some growth. Like at least for Connell, there is definitely growth. Like Marianne was fucked, is fucked. I don't know uska kya chal raha hai, but Connell definitely had growth.
Their feelings were suppressed so carefully in everyday life, forced into smaller and smaller spaces until seemingly minor events took an insane and frightening significance. I like this. That is like आज की दुनिया में सब की यही कहानी है. It's relatable. And then when she was in Sweden and she was being photoshot by this artist, and then she walks away and says, all of life is an artistic technique. मुझे ऐसा लगा कि it is such a materialistic thing. मतलब art is supposed to be abstract, but आजकल reel बनाने के लिए everything is like a technique. मतलब every life moment is a reel. Everything is so material.
I think I'll just end with the last few lines of the book. What they have now, they can never have back again. But for her, the pain of loneliness will be nothing to the pain that she used to feel of being unworthy. He brought her goodness like a gift and now it belongs to her. Meanwhile, his life opens out before him in all directions at once. They have done a lot of good for each other. Really, she thinks, really. People can really change one another. You should go, she says. I'll always be here. You know that.